everybody. My name is Joana Tavares. I'm a marine scientist currently working towards a PhD at the University of California, Irvine. And today I am going to tell you about this very exciting expedition we are about to start. We're going to Bermuda in early September. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about that. You might have heard of Bermuda before, about the Bermuda Triangle. So that's where we're going, but hopefully nothing weird will happen to us and we will return safe and sound to continue doing our science. So I study these microscopic organisms called phytoplankton, and these creatures live in the ocean, but we rarely ever see them because they're so small that you need very powerful microscopes to be able to observe them. So the picture you see here is a picture that was taken with one of those powerful microscopes. And the organisms that you're seeing are typical organisms of the coastal phytoplankton of California. Now, these organisms are very important, even though they're very small. They play very important roles on planet Earth. For starters, they're responsible for half of the oxygen available in the atmosphere. So, of course, we kind of depend on these guys to breathe. They also serve as the basis of virtually all aquatic food webs. And so they serve as food for pretty much everything else that lives in the ocean. And for us, if we eat seafood. And then in long time scales, these organisms are also affecting climate because they take up CO2 from the atmosphere, and some of the carbon in that CO2 gets trapped in their bodies. And when these organisms die, some of them will actually settle to the bottom of the ocean, taking that carbon with them and doing what we call carbon sequestration. So along geologic timescales, these organisms are also controlling climate. So those are all very good reasons to be studying phytoplankton, right? And I'm doing that, as I said before, at the University of California, Irvine, in the Department of Earth System Science. And last year, I was awarded the Public Impact Fellowship. So one of my responsibilities as a Public Impact Fellow is to share some of the science that I do with the public at large. So that's why we're here. That's why we're creating these materials that will hopefully serve to explain what we're doing, Okay, so get to it. This here is my list of research questions. Scientists are usually investigating a very specific list of questions, and that list there that you see is mine. So I'm looking at the effects that pollutants that are released in the smoke from the smokestacks of ships what kind of impacts this pollution can have on the ocean. So as you see here in the picture, when ships are combusting fuels in their engines, they will be releasing this smoke, and that smoke will contain aerosols. The aerosols will eventually settle on the surface of the ocean. And so what I want to know is, will that be somehow affecting the chemistry of the seawater? And if that happens, if the chemistry is altered, then what happens to the phytoplankton? Will that be changing the amount of phytoplankton present in that water? And will that change the types of phytoplankton that will grow or survive because of that input of aerosols? So how am I studying all this? Well, my main method is the use of what we call mesocosm incubation experiments. And I've done a few of them here on the coast of California. I've also conducted one all the way in Europe in the Baltic Sea near Sweden. And now this expedition is going to be the continuation of this work. So the first step was to collect samples of ship emissions, so pollution from ships. That one I've already done. So the particles that the ships will be releasing into the air, we collect them on filters. And then the second step, which is the second picture that you see here, is to extract those aerosols so that we can then use these extracts for these controlled experiments in which we put seawater with phytoplankton in tiny little bottles, similar to these here. And then we spike the bottles with different amounts of pollution from the ships. And then we observe and monitor the change in that phytoplankton after a certain amount of time. It could be 48 hours or 72 hours. It depends on the goals of that one experiment. For Bermuda, we are actually going to be conducting the experiment for 72 hours. So why Bermuda, right? Why do I have to go all the way to Bermuda to test this? Well, because I really am interested in looking at the extreme response of the phytoplankton. And I wanted to see particularly how the phytoplankton that evolved in areas where there's not a lot of nutrients to begin with, how do these phytoplankton react to the input of metals and nutrients coming from the smoke of ships? And to do that, I really have to find areas of the ocean that are very remote, far away from land, so that they're not receiving nutrients from, say, river runoff or from upwelling. And also, you want to find regions that are away from windstorms that could be bringing nutrients from, like, deserts, for example. So if you are in a region like, for example, here in the Atlantic, if you are on this side here of the Atlantic, off the coast of Africa, this phytoplankton that lives here will be very well adapted to inputs of nutrients coming from winds that will bring sand from the desert all the way to the ocean. So there's a lot of nutrients in the background here to begin with. But in Bermuda, if you sail off of the island of Bermuda and you go off far from the island enough, you will get to this place called the Bermuda Atlantic Time Series. That's a station, a very famous research station where oceanographers go and measure the quality of the water there continuously. And so that's where we're gonna go get the water for the experiment. It's water that has very, very little amount of anything to begin with. Very clean water, okay? So that's why we're going to Bermuda. And how we're going to get to this station? Well, thankfully, we managed to establish a partnership with the Bermuda Institute for Ocean Science. And they have a really amazing research vessel called the Atlantic Explorer. I'm going to play this video here so you can see her sailing. So, what happened to my video? Here we go. So there is the Atlantic Explorer. It's a state-of-the-art research vessel. It has laboratories and all sorts of equipment that we might need to do our research. There will be other scientists on this cruise collecting data for their own research projects, and we're going to be coming along to go get this really clean seawater. And we'll be on the boat for 3 days, and then we'll return to the laboratory to finish the experiment there, which is beautiful, right? So that's the vessel we're going to be using. And before I finish the presentation, I would like to thank the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Science, not only for allowing us to go on their vessel, but also to use their laboratory facilities and for actually partially funding this research. So they awarded us with a grant in aid, which is offsetting the costs of staying in Bermuda and doing research there. It's really neat. And with that, I'm gonna conclude my presentation by inviting you all to Zoom with me. So there will be a number of opportunities to answer your questions, to talk about all of this in live with me. So the first Zoom call that we're gonna have is gonna be on Thursday, August the 26th at 10 a.m. So if you go to BermudaExpedition.eventbrite.com, you can RSVP and register for the event, and you get a link to join us in this conversation. And yeah, I hope to see you all there. Thank you. Bye.